So today I'm very excited to have a conversation with Aakash Ranison, who obviously is now a friend. But before, to just give a bit of background about him, he's been one of the leading proponents of climate change and sustainability in the country, and an avid traveler. Over last few months and years, every time I've interacted with him, I've learned something new to apply in this ever changing world of how to leave this planet better for the next generation. So Akash, thank you for having a conversation with us.
Thank you so much for calling me on board. And also, like when you were telling me right now, who am I also thought I'm also a customer as well.
Yeah, that's always.
I think the first thing I was a customer. Later on, things came up.
Yes. So I think those are just means for us to get connected. But I think, when you start kind of unpacking what the customer does or what they are championing, I think then really you start understanding the journey as to how, the relationship between a customer and a provider works. But Akash, so today, we wanted to have a conversation around this topic of climate change and sustainability. It is obviously a topic which has been discussed probably more so in the last 1 year than ever before, because everybody is now seeing, the impact of global warming. Everybody's thinking about, are we leaving a planet better for our children than we acquired, and ultimately, we're realizing this is just a borrowed time, and we need to leave this place, much more better for our children. Let me start with the basics, right? Because there is so much sophistication out in the topic, and when I talk to employees or our colleagues, everybody says, okay, it's great, but what can I do, right, in this whole world of climate change and sustainability? And one of the things I wanted to ask you was a topic of mindfulness, right? Because I think everything starts from awareness, and in our day-to-day lives, right? I mean, we do so many things, and a lot of these things are autopilot. We're not even thinking about, the kind of things we are buying, the frequency at which we are buying, and the usage, right? So let's start with mindfulness and awareness, and your perspective on, how does one really change some of these aspects so we are making incremental impacts toward, a better climate or better environment for the future generations.
So, in today's time, we are kind of like obviously on autopilot. We don't make calls. Companies and marketing agencies, they make a call for us, and we just follow it because they have decided that we have created a product, it is good for the market, and we have invested a huge money on it. We have to sell it. And then the creative minds, which I really love. I love how these mind works. Like a lot of people are my friends who sit behind brands and create this narrative so that I, as a consumer, who's like just watching this advertisement or this campaign, I believe that, I don't really need it. I need it and I need to buy it. So I think that's where the life is going. But I think a lot of people say that I'm not really happy in life. I'm like, okay, hold on. I accept that. But do you know what is your happiness? No, I don't know. So if I don't really know what is my happiness, how am I thinking that I'm going to be happy? If I don't know what is the address I have to be, I can never reach there. And that is what is happening with the life, that we are just going with the flow. What we really, I think, need to do, and which life gave me, as in travel gave me an opportunity to do, is to stop. First, when I started traveling, I was going to cities. Most of the cities which I could have heard the name of. So I wanted to go to all Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, Chennai, Kolkata, everywhere. But then life took me to Leh Ladakh. Life took me to Spiti Valley. These are places where there are very few people who live over there, and it's a very down-to-earth community. They are satisfied with what they have. They follow the Buddhist religion, and that gave me an opportunity to calm down, to breathe, and just learn from these people, because I've lived there for like years and years in these places. First time when I went to Spiti, I was there for at least 3.5 months. That gave me an opportunity to see how they live, how they are happy even when they don't have a lot of things. They don't have the new phone. Forget new phone. They did not even have internet when I went over there. So for those 3.5 months, I was just without internet, and my life without internet is unimaginable. But I did live over there and I was happier. So I think living over there between these people who live in small villages and follow this religion gave me the opportunity to first calm down and see what do I really need in life. And I think from there the journey started, and unknowingly I come up to this place where I fit into a term called minimalist, right? That I just have few numbers of clothes because I'm looking more towards happiness. That I want to be clear what is my happiness. So is my happiness is there in buying a lot of clothes or buying a lot of stuff, or in traveling. So I said obviously traveling. So I made sure that now I don't have to go and buy a lot of things. Even when people are gifting me things, I'm saying humbly, please don't do it. Or if they end up like giving it to me, so I have to donate it to somebody else, that hey, I can't have it. So I think that's where mindfulness comes, that me choosing what I really want and me choosing what I don't really want, so that eventually I can say that hey, I'm happy.
Yeah, I think the point about being, first of all, being aware of our actions, right? Because we are just so much mechanically, the next model of phone comes, we buy, the next brand of clothing we buy, or the next model of car we buy. And I think and I think a lot of times we don't step back and ask ourselves, why are we buying the new model, right? Because is it just because everybody's doing it? And also, I think you mentioned very interestingly the experience of going up in the mountains. I know you do a lot of it. I had that opportunity to do a few of these treks, and actually, it's a great analogy, right? It just teaches you how bare minimum things actually make you much more happier, because all you need is a good environment and good nature, and then basic food and a bag which you trek on, and that's enough to just generate that happiness within all of us, right? And I think honing in the point of I guess, would you say, does one step back always and evaluate to say, okay, asking the question why, right? Because like why you're buying more things, and is it just for outward happiness or versus looking inward, right? So like, what are the practical things you have done, which perhaps, like I'll tell you, right? And for me now, I'm very conscious of what I call uncluttering or decluttering, right? To say every time look like, okay, I'm not going to replace anything now until this thing dies. And like if it's a product, I'm not going new one. Like, what are the one or two things maybe you have done which people can just think about? Oh yeah, this is very basic, right? Because then it's very applicable to say, okay, here's things I can do on a day-to-day basis to change in my life, which may get me towards this kind of outcome.
So I think what I really do is, so I'm crazy about quality. I just love quality. I cannot compromise on that, and I'm okay paying whatever money it takes. So my idea is that, okay, for example, I do use iPhone, right? Because it lasts long and it offers me the service I need, and I can obviously go and buy an Android which will have lesser cost, and can also make phone calls and can run my apps. But then obviously I know that as of today, Apple is making products more consciously as compared to other companies, right? And I can at least take Apple accountable on the work they do. So first of all, I know that at least the company, I want to, as in the money which I'm giving to any company, I want to be very sure about that. I know they're not 100% sustainable, but do they accept it or not, right? Acknowledgement is a really important thing. Like when you acknowledge, that's when you can really reach a place and that company acknowledges that. I'm like, okay, that's one good point. Another is the quality, that if I invest this certain amount in this product, how long will it last versus the other product? I have tried using Android, but I ended up at a position where I have to change it to make it work perfectly fine, which was like in max 2 years, versus when I'm using an iPhone, I end up using it for about 4 to 6 years minimum, right? In between, there was a time when I didn't even feel like that, am I ready to take a call to, let's say, buy an iPhone? I was really ambiguous and I was going through a climate anxiety. So I was using this small, tiny black and white phone, which is still there in my bag, to make phone calls, that's it. And I was still running an Instagram account via my laptop. So this does happen. Similarly goes to the product, as in like clothing I have. I just have one pair of jeans. Believe me, one pair of jeans and one jogger, that's it, those two things. And one pair of shoes, because obviously as a traveler also, I can't carry a lot of things. I can't carry two pair of shoes. I don't have the possibility to do that. I just have like 4 pairs of t-shirts, that's it. So I'm just changing in between them, and 2 pairs of hoodies. But also, like, as a traveler, it is important to me. And also in terms of like life, it really eases me up. I don't have to think about it. Like when I woke up today, I did not have to plan that, hey, I have to do a podcast with Nikhil. What am I wearing? I knew what I'm wearing. And also mentally, it gives me a lot of peace that I'm not rushing into things. I'm not, let's say, taking a lot of decisions. It's easy. I know what am I doing. 1 phone, 1 shoes, 1 pair of clothes, and life is easy. So eventually, I'm not emitting a lot. I'm not spending a lot, and I'm happier with what I have because satisfaction. Because if I don't feel satisfied with my decisions, then I'll feel like shit, I'm not looking good in this what I'm wearing. I should have bought another piece of cloth, another phone which you have, and also like accepting what I have is good. Because I might see you using another Samsung bigger flip phone kind of a thing. Flip and fold, they have 2 different bigger one. And then I'm like, oh, my phone's screen is smaller. So I'm comparing, and then I'm taking myself to an uncomfortable place where eventually I'll come into real physical world and go make a call that I need the phone Nikhil had.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great analogy. Moving on to digital space, right, which is kind of all of us live and breathe that, right? And from a corporate perspective, and you and I had done an educational piece some time back about a very simple thing about emails and spam, right? Like 280 billion plus spams happening every year, and unconsciously people don't realize about like how much storage email is taking if you're not deleting emails, or the trash, or the things you subscribe to, newsletters and so on, right? And even small actions there, right? Cleaning up your email box or delete, kind of cleaning your trash makes an impact. Your perspective on this hyper digitization world, and of course it's a business, but what are some of the things you're seeing, maybe the shifts happening maybe more in the younger generation, right? Because I think the younger generation is a lot more aware, or at least they're getting a lot more vocal about that, hey, this is environment, climate, leave it in good hands. As you travel, as you meet, and you're obviously a different generation than I am, like what are the things you're seeing where at least the awareness is increasing or the actions are increasing in this? See, the adoption of digitization is very high, because they are super tech savvy now, but then the awareness of whether they realize what their actions are counterproductive to climate change or environment and so on. Like, so what are you seeing this trend, or some things you're picking up from the?
So first thing, like, I wanna make sure that people accept it and understand it, that without carbon emissions, like most of the people when they talk about climate change, they just talk about carbon emissions. There are other gases as well which are making more impact, not which, but one, at least methane is making more impact on climate change as compared to carbon. Talking about carbon because that's the main focus over here, at least when it comes to technology. It's impossible to live without carbon. So I want people to first of all accept carbon is not an enemy, it's not the villain of the movie. So we have to stop thinking about that. Something cannot happen and keep 0 carbon emission, right? I'm breathing, it's carbon emissions, right? So a lot of time what happens, people think that if I am talking about climate change, I should do 0 carbon emissions. It's impossible, it's gonna do. Now, second thing, when we have accepted that, okay, carbon is a part of life, it has to be there. It has to be there in the atmosphere as well, but just the excess emission is the problem, right? That we have to accept. It's like spending money is not the problem. You have money, you have to spend, you have to run your life, but if you're spending way too much, like your credit card limit, that is a problem, right? Now, another thing which we have to accept is doing things on ground physically, mostly in most of the cases, will have more carbon emissions versus doing things technologically, like technically in this virtual world. And also we all have to earn, make money. So running companies is important, because if you don't run the company, there are people who have to feed, right? Obviously when the company, let's say in this case GoDaddy, when it runs, it feeds like billions of people, I believe, around the world, right? Because I, even as a customer, I run a website over there And when people come and visit the website, I eventually make some revenue over there, which helps me do the things I do, right? So it is important to run businesses. So we can't really put things in a certain way that, okay, this business is emitting carbon emission, it's not a good business. It's gonna emit anyway. It's just like how we can optimize it, how we can be a little better than yesterday. Now, what people are doing is like how they accept it, and obviously like today's life is just 100% about digital. Without digital, it is impossible. This video being recorded in audio, in video, digital. People watching this video, digital. Everything is 100% almost like now becoming digital. We live our life that way. But now, obviously people are more conscious about it, that hey, I want to see that the product I'm choosing, the services I'm choosing.
Yeah, I want to pick on this digital stuff also, right? I mean, there's one of the notion before about multitasking. Everybody thought it's the best thing in the world, and I think it's probably the worst thing in the world, because all it does is distract you, right? We talk about phones and digitization, like, the minute you walk in with a phone in your hand and you're having a conversation and you start looking at it, I mean, you've already lost the moment, right? Because like you're here and you're neither, any place, right? And so on. So, that's where while there is no getting away from digitization, which is of course our business, but other than that, it's your day-to-day life. This concept of focusing on the moment and just being able to just not be worried about looking at your phone, right? And these kind of habits, right? I mean, how does that get cultivated, right? Because ultimately it's impacting mental mindset as well, because now you're in 4 places. You're checking, I have to respond to somebody. And one of the things I learned from one of the leaders, he said, was that when you go in the morning and you open your emails, right? Once you start reading your emails, now you started working for those emails. You had an agenda, you come into the office, I'm going to accomplish this. Now you open somebody send you email, oh, I have to answer this. Somebody has an issue going on, I have to address this. So before you know, your day is over and your agenda is gone, right? So it's about just having that discipline to say, I'm just not going to look at my phone for 1 hour. And I think we're just not, we feel so uncomfortable as if life is lost. And in mountains, as you know, there's no connection. So you're like, oh, I haven't missed anything, right?
So I think it comes more on the philosophical side, which I really love. I'm a big fan of reading philosophy. So what happens personally, even in life, right? We don't realize how we are ruining our own personal life in terms of mental health, and also our relationship with people by being in the phone. I really try that when I get into meetings, can I just keep my phone in my bag? So even when it's ringing, I don't know.
Yeah, even if it's in a hand, you're giving a signal that I'm ready to be distracted.
Yes, or even I don't let you know. It's in my pocket. It's vibrating right now, and you don't know, but I'm not there. I am not there. I'm not really listening to what you're saying, because in my brain, I'm thinking, who must be that person calling me? What was that text about? Is it reply to that message which I sent right before this meeting? Or is it about the next meeting? So now I'm not there here with you in this conversation. So I think also it's about, if we think about like growing in life or doing anything good in life, it's about this only, that how well focused I am on to you. Am I really valuing your time with me or not? So I know this is not related to sustainability or anything, but I really think that overall life, the way I live, I don't really live a life that, okay, I need to be this most sustainable guy in the world. I just try to live a life which is happy, and I'm happy with it. And I am having like good people around me who really trust in me, or who give time to me as in the way I give time to them, like 100% focus. So obviously first is it ruins your personal focus and also the task you're doing. For example, if I recently, like I was just completing this book so-called, which we connected for as well. For 2 months I was just into it, and I know how much phone was taking me away from it. Every time I would start doing, but then a mail from my publisher itself. I went to the phone, I will even forget that I was here, I'm on my phone. I'm doing something else, and then I would think, why did I pick my phone? There was some task, right? So I'm so lost, or my brain is like so habituated or kind of like trained in a certain way, that as soon as I pick the phone, I know that where am I going? I'm just gonna go watch videos or some Instagram scrolls, and that's it. So I even forget what am I doing, and it's kind of like taking away the time. While working on this book, I really try to work hard on myself and just leave my phone in another room, so that even if it's vibrating, I don't know. So I think we already need to do it, and I think that's when the first question where we talked about mindfulness and choosing what you really want to do, that comes in picture. Like, we are not controlling phone is controlling us.
Yeah, and choosing the uncomfortable option. Moving on to a bit of the corporate side, right? One of the things which we have been trying to do is kind of drive awareness in our employees about small things, right? For example, let's take water consumption in the office, right? I mean, we know, like whatever, right? 70% of the world is occupied by water, but only 2.5% actually is available, which is clean, and out of that, only 1% is actually available to humans. Population is doubling. The water supply is remaining the same, or it actually isn't getting worse. And we've tried to make employees aware about small habits, or at least kill those habits, right? For example, plastic bottles. How do you get not have people use multiple bottles, or you have your own refilling of the same water. Don't fill up glasses of water if you don't need to, kind of stuff, right? Are there things you are seeing as you interact with other people in terms of the corporate environment, as what changes possibly can be made, like which just daily small 1% change can result in 100% improvement over time, right?
So I totally appreciate the thought, like even talking about these points, because I think, see, before we do things, we have to think about it, right? And Buddha has rightly stated that thought becomes thing. If you don't even have a thought, it won't convert into a thing. And obviously, out there, when we see in the media, or we see out there in the main world, there are things which are greenwashing, but I know there are some people, or there are some organization, companies which are actually making the change, and I really appreciate that. And also another thing which I understand, and I want a lot of people to understand, is a thing called transitioning period, right? If you have to do a small stuff like picking this glass from here to here, this even has a transitioning period, but it's just like so small that you don't really feel it, that it's taking time. But it did take time, because it's a smaller task. But now if I say that, okay, 1 billion glasses, pick from this place, keep it on this place, even 1 centimeter, 1 billion glasses, it's going to take time. And I'm not even saying shift from this warehouse to the other warehouse. I'm just saying 1 centimeter, but 1 billion glasses. It's going to take time. It's a huge task. You just can't like move it here to here, because the huge quantity. Similarly, now we have to understand, when I talk to a lot of brands, because I really love talking to brands about that, hey, can your brand be more sustainable? Not that I want to push them, but I just want to like talk to them in a very positive way. And do you need any help with it, right? Not that I'm offering services, but hey, do you want to talk to me? I can just come in there and help you, being in a meeting, tell you that what can be the plan of action, how you can move towards it. So a lot of brands are doing it, and I really appreciate them, even if it's like 1%, what you said, right? Because I know that is the start. And in the start, when you're starting, it's gonna be 1%. And I can't come to you at 1% and shame on you that, hey, you're not doing good, or you're not putting enough efforts, because that way I'm not really helping the other person, and I'm kind of like putting a break on a journey which you just started. So a lot of time happens when people out there, because I interact with a lot of people, and because of this medium of social media, I do end up connecting with a lot of people, and I talk about climate change. And if I'm working with any other brand, people would come and say that, Aakash, for example, I worked with a X car brand. The car is electric, but the seats were leather. So they were like, hey Aakash, but the seats are leather. I'm like, hey, hold on. See the positive side. The half glass is full. At least the car is converted from a fossil fuel engine to an electric engine. Eventually, the next step will come and things will happen. So I really appreciate that. And yes, there are brands who are doing this. There are brands who are picking up things. Eventually, let's say, trying to remove plastic from the whole premises they have, wherever the stores they have. There are brands I know personally who are trying to run that specific stores, whichever they can, by sourcing solar energy, right? By bringing green renewable energies over there. So not possible on all the stores, because obviously there are brands who are like huge, I mostly work with, and they have stores where they can't control the places, right? They have to see the local infrastructure, what is available, but they are trying that even if they have to pay a little more money, but they can get solar or renewable energy. They are trying that. They are trying to cut down cost. I've seen brands earlier, let's say majorly like shopping brands and places where we go to shop earlier, I've seen like so many of plastic bags, they've converted now to these paper bags, right? Whether branded or whether just made out of like recycled paper, which are like newspapers. So I do see changes. Brands even are trying to, let's say, come up to sustainable clothing materials. I was recently in Agra where I saw that how on like huge scale they are making clothes out of bamboo, even papaya and coconut and different textile material. So that's a real, and obviously these associations or these companies are making these products, producing it because there's a demand. Who's making the demand? Obviously end consumer, but then there's a brand in between who is demanding and who is paying more money to employees that, hey, can you produce these kind of product more, because eventually I want to supply this. Another thing, I was in Bombay traveling to somewhere between Lower Parel to Bandra, and I stopped by and I saw a charging station on a fuel station. I was really genuinely happy because most of the people talk about it, Aakash, I'm ready to buy an electric car, but where do I charge it? And I was so happy. As of that point, nobody was charging it over there, but I am happy at least the infrastructure is coming in place. And once it is there, and once I'm sharing this story with you and more people will hear it out, so it's building confidence in our brain that eventually we can do it.
Yeah, and I think, the 1% theory is very powerful because it sounds you're doing 1% a day, but if you accumulate it over the year, you could become 200% better, right? And I think the only way to make change is 1%, because otherwise it's too much, right? To say, okay, I'm just suddenly going to become, from X to Y, and you're right. I mean, the practicality of what things we can live with and what things we cannot live with, and it's not like a magic switch, right? Like one of the things we did, like in running events, right? A lot of time, number of plastic bottles when every water station, every kilometer, you would drink and throw and drink and throw. I mean, that was a norm, like 5 years ago. Got away from that, only like here's the water you need, here's the small glass which is made out of sustainable material, and drink. You don't need to do all this, like fancy stuff. And so I think that mindset certainly changed, right? I mean, even there was a blogging in the running community where you're running and you're being mindful of there's things out in the street and you can help perhaps clean that up. Moving on to the last topic, which is your book. You've obviously coming close to completing a book which is going to come out in the next couple of months, I think. What's the book about, and what message are you trying to bring out through that book around, I'm sure, this powerful topic of leaving a better environment for the future generations?
So I think the book somewhere aligns with the conversation we just had. It's quite like on the similar lines.
So it's written in the book then.
Yeah, exactly. Just a book, right? We did. It's somewhere like whatever we are speaking, somewhere this does connect to the book, because what we are trying to do is simplify the sustainable living, simplify our carbon footprints or digital footprints. That's what the book is trying to do. Because if I don't know the problem, if you don't know the problem, you can't help me, right? So we need to know the problem, and also knowing the problem is also not enough, because now the problem, let's say for example, sorry, but this is the only example I have. When I come to GoDaddy as a customer, you just try to simplify my problem, making a website. You just try to do as much as stuff you can and bring me the end button thing that, hey, if you just click the button, it's gonna happen. That's what I'm just trying to do with my customer, which is my reader. The book is trying to simplify climate change, talk in a very simple language with like very simple UI and UX, that how simple I can make it climate change for people to understand in very simple language, like removing jargons, removing technical words, because I can very easily say that, hey, the world is already like above 1 degree Celsius and we have to keep it below 2 degrees Celsius. Then people are like, hey, hold on, Aakash, I think currently the temperature in Delhi would be at least somewhere above 20 degrees Celsius and somewhere below 30 degrees Celsius. So what are you talking about 2 degrees? Where does it match? So then I'm confusing people, right? Versus what I'm trying to do is simplify the language, and the book talks about different industries. One of them is digital industry, technology, where we talk about our digital carbon footprints and how we can cut it off and what things can we do. And it also comes with like end options, like resources.